Welcome back into Sports Buzz, everyone here on the PulseNetwork.com. I'm Tyler Piper. Now, we had mentioned that we were talking with Christy Dosh just a little bit ago about the Big East, the Big 12, and all of the conference realignment, everything that was taking place. Louisville possibly leaving the Big East, going to the Big 12. Well, apparently we've got some late breaking news that really everybody is discussing right now. This coming from Austin American statesman, sports columnist Kirk Bowles. He's tweeting out this, folks. Big 12 presidents and chancellors have voted to invite TCU to join the league. Should be finalized over next several days. This is huge because I don't know if you guys are aware of this or not, but TCU, Texas Christian University, was just invited and accepted the bid to join the Big East just a couple of months ago. At the very beginning of the summer, they were slated to join the Big East in 2012 or 2013. I can't think of it off the top of my head, but I believe it was 2012 that they were slated to join. Now, the Big 12, it looks like they are scrounging for parts. They are going to make some moves. They are done being the kicking bag right now because that is what has been happening over the last couple of weeks because everybody seems to be leaving the Big 12. However, joining, it could be TCU. TCU, a huge move to pull out of the Big East, which in my mind, in all honesty, it's a smart move for them because honestly, there's going to be better football being played inside the Big 12 than there will be inside of the Big East. What this means now, though, is what is going to happen with the Big East because a lot of people were looking at the Big East saying, okay, well, we got TCU. This is a step in the right direction. It wasn't the answer to all the problems, but now TCU pulling out, guess what? That is a monster. TCU, I guarantee, is pulling out because of what has happened with Syracuse and Pitt. That lessens the load for them. Oof. Big, giant news. Big, giant move, to say the least. Now, everybody is talking about this on Twitter right now. There are literally people all over the place that are discussing what has actually taken place right now. Just speaking of people right now, Phil, I just G-chatted you something so you can see exactly what link I'm looking at right now. Angry Trey, who is Trey Fallon, who writes a TCU blog, he's saying, simply put, moving on up. A lot of people have that exact same idea because for TCU, they are a team that, well, here, just so you guys are aware, TCU, this football team, has been good over the last several years. They've been definitely stepping in the right direction. They're a little bit worse than they have been in years past because they're a young team. But last year, playing Wisconsin and playing them well, showing that they can kind of hang with some of the big boys. This year, it might be a different story. But next year or the year after that, hey, I tell you what, TCU could hang. Now, this is huge for TCU for the mere fact that it is recruiting. It's all about recruiting. If they're saying, well, guess what? We're going to try to grab some recruits so we can play in the Big East. Well, imagine what they're going to be able to grab when they go play inside of the Big 12. Not to mention, as far as away games, their travel time and their expenses has just been cut in half. They will no longer be traveling. Think about it, what the Big East is comprised of, where the schools are actually located. You're going to be taking on teams inside of West Virginia, Louisville. That'll be probably the closest bet will be Louisville. But you've got West Virginia, you've got teams like UConn that you're going to be playing, which, while they are good teams, they're not the caliber that TCU wants to be playing. Now, coming to the Big 12, they're obviously going to be playing Oklahoma, Texas, Baylor, just to name a few, Kansas. These are teams that could all put up great fights against them. Phil, you know, I know you're not a huge college football guy, but you've been following along everything that's that's actually taken place with the conference alignment. It is nutty to say the least. Now, I'm sure you've been finding more people talking about this as well.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. I don't know nearly as much as you, so I'm not even going to give you my opinion on this. I'm going to give you some tweets, some stuff that's coming out real-time live as we're talking about this and let you react to it. This one coming in from John on Twitter here. He says, pick your poison, TCU. Time to choose between one conference that's on fire and one collapsing on itself. So what do you make of that, Ty?
Yeah, you know what? It goes back to what Christy was saying. Honestly, I mean, Christy Dosh, if you guys missed the segment, we were talking about which one has more staying power right now. You know, Big East, obviously their basketball will be around forever, but their football, no dice. I don't think it'll happen. I'm anxious to know. Phil, you can kind of speak to this. Hockey is in a completely different conference. There's no such thing as the Big East hockey.
Right, exactly.
I wonder if, and you know what? It's not a bad way of doing things. I mean, realistically, because it is by way of, well, the way things are kind of located. Obviously, Notre Dame throws a wrench into that as far as location goes. But we are getting the super conference of hockey. I mean, that's correct in saying that, right?
It is to a degree, but there's still other viable conferences out there. Michigan's not in hockey, and there's just not as many programs. There's not as many programs in hockey, so to say a super conference, well, it's always kind of been super conferences. There's not as many to start with, Ty. Yeah. There's not that many conferences out there. A few of the smaller ones are going by the wayside, but the big boys are the big boys, and that's not going to change in hockey unless, they get 100 more programs and get even with football that way.
Yeah, I don't know, but it's money. It's all about the money. It just shows. And as far as that's concerned, more people are making money inside the Big 12. If TCU is playing teams like Texas, like teams like Oklahoma, there's more money to be made there than there is than going on a road trip to go play UConn. I'm sorry, but that's just the way it's going to be. Not to mention, chances are more wins inside of that conference is going to guarantee a higher bowl appearance as opposed to wins inside the Big East. Just saying, that's what's going to happen. But Phil, you think you say more people are talking about this as well?
Yeah, another tweet here from William Gorman. TCU has an invite to the Big 12. Goodbye, Big East. You were a great basketball conference. Blame football and, as you just said, Tyler, money for your ultimate demise. Tyler, is this officially the end of the Big East when TCU pulls out the big get for the Big East? Is it the end of the Big East?
Well, here's the thing. I think everybody thought it was the end of the Big 12 when Texas A&M left. Then they go out of school. When Texas A&M left is only just the icing on the cake because obviously they lost Colorado as well. So that's just some of the big schools that they have already lost as well. Nebraska leaving too. These are big giant name schools, folks, that left the Big 12. TCU is not a monster player for them. I mean, while it is a decent-sized school, it's not huge. We'll see what happens with Mizzou. Mizzou is another one of those teams that people are saying could possibly be leaving as well. We'll see if Mizzou sticks around now. This definitely throws a wrench into that. If Mizzou leaves, everyone's talking about Mizzou possibly going to the SEC now. Does that hurt the Big 12? TCU trade off from Mizzou? I don't know. I'm not sold on that just yet. I mean, I think Mizzou is a much bigger player than TCU is at this point in time. But I don't know. Things could definitely change. We will certainly see what happens. But Phil, again.
Yeah, we got another one here from Kenneth. He says, wow, rumors are TCU to the Big 12. Great replacement for A&M. Now, I don't know how true that is, Tyler. You were just talking about, what kind of relevance this has to the Big 12 in terms of, the program itself. They're not A&M, are they? They're not the same level as A&M.
By no means. Absolutely not. And especially right now, they definitely do not. Here's the thing that you look at for money. People will always focus on how they are as a team as far as the way they've been played. TCU does not have the following that Texas A&M does. Texas A&M is is the largest by numbers school in the state of Texas. Obviously, Texas has the biggest following out there. Everybody in the state of Texas seems to follow the Longhorns, loves that burnt orange. However, Texas A&M is a massive player as far as the enrollment, and the amount of people that are going to be following this team is huge. You can't fill the void with TCU and expect that to be huge and expect that to be a massive player. Not to mention, TCU has been winning against teams that are subpar. Obviously, we've seen them lose to Boise State a couple years in a row now. Is Boise State next? Could Boise State join the Big 12? Tell me that wouldn't be pretty cool to see, folks. It really would. But Phil, more people tweeting.
Yeah, I
sent you a couple ones as well, so some good ones.
Another one here from Jim. He says, apparently BYU fans are not happy about this news. They want to get in on the action. Really, BYU fans, settle down. More news to come. TCU, a great addition to the Big 12. BYU is a must-have for the Big 12 as well. So this person seems to think that BYU is going to be part of this realignment story coming up next. What do you think about that?
Well, again, it goes back. I mean, I keep circling back around to money, and it goes down to money, not the way the team is playing. Obviously, the way a team plays at that given moment, at that time frame, is going to kind of change the face of things. But as far as, I'm concerned, BYU has a monster following. I think people underestimate the amount of people that follow along with that team. It is absolutely huge. BYU has a huge following. But more people are talking about BYU
Before we get to a couple other tweets real quick, Christy Dosh has chimed in on Twitter about BYU. I still think BYU is a top of Big 12 wish list. If they didn't already turn down, then I think they get invite before Louisville. So Christie still thinks that BYU is a shot to go to the Big 12, Ty.
Yeah, I don't think there's really any question about that. And you know what? I want to go back to what we were saying before as far as Big East being that basketball school. TCU does not have a basketball school, a basketball program by any stretch of the matter, folks, whatsoever. So that's one thing to really know. Now, Lisa Horn of Fox Sports, big college football writer as well as a big-time NASCAR writer as well. But Lisa jumping on Twitter saying TCU maybe going to the Big 12, first Big East, now Big 12. Why can't they pick a conference more stable? Three's a charm. That's the truth. TCU now has gone to two different conferences that are both on the rocks. So they went to the Big East. That one wasn't on the rocks when they were deciding to go because they still had Syracuse and Pitt intact. They were both schools there. Meanwhile, going to the Big 12, we've seen everybody kind of abandon the Big 12. But is this a rebuilding phase? Does this help? I don't know if it helps them tremendously. Big 12 still needs to bring in a major player and keep some of these guys around. Does TCU, I think that's the question to be asked to everybody, does TCU make Oklahoma and Texas happy? Because those are the ones you need to be paying close attention to. Not necessarily Mizzou, not necessarily Baylor, not Kansas. Do you want to keep those schools happy? Yeah, at a certain breadth, but you got to keep Texas happy. You got to teach Oklahoma happy because if those two schools leave, whew, then we are in trouble because then, honestly, we're going to have to become the Big South because those two schools are going to leave and TCU will be on the same caliber. And in my honest opinion, TCU is on the same caliber as Baylor, as Rice, as Southern Illinois. I mean, all those schools. So I think that's another way to really look at it. But, people making jokes about this as well. Another tweet that I found from Pete Gray. Pete Gray. I apologize for that. He says TCU in the Big East is equal to Mike Piazza as a Marlin. So, yeah, you might as well say that. Great comparison. That is a phenomenal comparison right there, isn't it, Phil?
Big East gets all excited, trade Gary Sheffield and, a couple other guys and, trade the whole farm for Mike Piazza and then just flip him to the Mets. Yeah. Just flip TCU to the Mets, Tyler. Why don't we do that?
You might as well. Let's bet the farm on this guy and then say, see you later. You might as well. All right. Great stuff. Love talking about some of the breaking news, but more people are talking about this. Last tweet I want to bring up. Phil, I'm going to send this to you right now as we speak. This is from Pete Thamel. He's from the New York Times. He's just tweeting this out right now as we speak. So, Phil, I'm going to send this out to you so we can bring this up live. Something to really note, something to pay attention to about this. He tweets out, TCU must pay the $5 million exit fee, but isn't bound by the 27-month waiting period like Q's and Pitt. Something to really pay close attention to. That's one thing that you guys really need to know because Q's and Pitt were in a different situation because they were under a major contract while TCU is joining. They're not joining for another couple years. So for them to be able to do this is a lot less as far as shelling out the money in comparison to Q's and Pitt. So anyways, we are going to take a quick break. We've got a lot more sports buzz coming your way in a few seconds. Don't go anywhere. You're watching the Pulse Network.